Everybody. Hello, this is Christophe. Good morning, good afternoon. Today I wanted to do some kind of advanced spreadsheet. There's going to be some information about getting the 6 people that are on the court. And we're going to do a little bit of advanced because it's going to talk about numbers and it's going to talk about string and it's going to talk about VS lineup. One of the requests that my coach had is he said, Christophe, live, I'd like to get information about the opposite 6 that are on the court. I want to go their good pass. I want to see their efficiency, whatever you want, the plus minus, and I want this to be the 6. And so usually what we got is kind of simple, right? We create a spreadsheet. We put the number here in that column and said, I want to talk about that number 3. I want to talk about the 825. So you start your lineup there, and your sheet is created. The problem is twofold. One is what do we do when you got substitution? You have to actually change it, like go back to your stuff and change the sheet, and then every time you do a change, so at the beginning or whatever, then your coach has to actually reload it, right? Because otherwise it stays static and you have to actually save it and reload it, I believe so. So I said, okay, there should be a way for me to dynamically calculate who are the starting 6 in a match. And so you're thinking, okay, I can probably just use this, VS lineup. And I'm going to have who is in position 1, right, at that time of the game. And it's going to be number 19. And so you could actually build like this and it's great. The other situation is it's going to change. The order is going to change every rotation because people are changing. So the person in zone 1 in that rotation is going to be 19, but in the next rotation is going to be the other person. And because I got some conditional formatting based on, are you middle, whatever, or just the fact that it changes, the numbers are going to change. And my coach is going to say, oh, hold on. The first one was red now it's the second one, whatever, something like that. So I wanted to actually keep that lineup kind of static. And I wanted to stay regardless of the rotation. Like the 5, 6, I'm going to start with the setter and then I'm going to organize them. I'm going to say who are the opposite and everything. So I want to get the setter first, and then I want to get the outside, and I want it to the opposite, and then I want the 2 middle. And usually most of us, 99.9999% of us, work with the same kind of rotation when you got the setter that is followed by the outside hitter, that is followed by a middle, the opposite, and all kind of stuff. So you kind of know who is actually coming in what position, especially in the international level. It's more or less something that I did in my serving lineup, where I actually wanted to know, how they started, how a team started over time, right? So if I want to see how Puerto Rico starts over time, if they start the same way, if they have the same lineup, I got this kind of spreadsheet that tells me that, look, they're starting in zone 2, zone 1 time in zone 6, but zone 2, zone 1. And their lineup is pretty similar. They start with number 3, and then they have, the outside attacker is usually number 7, and the opposite is number 1 or number 6 anyway, right? So that was kind of the same idea, but I wanted it to stay there. So I'm going to now show you the function. So if you just want the function, you can just look at the function and and then go and build your own. And if you want, you can actually stay a little bit longer and we'll detail the function. So the function on the first one on the setter is this one, where I get the lineup, the current lineup of A, which gives me the setter location. I put it into a text, I extract the number, and I actually decide who is actually that position. And so that's what I do for the first one. And then the other one, depending on their location, what I do is I take the one that is mod 0 on this one, on that location, right? So it's going to give me the number, and I'm adding 1 because the next one after the setter is the opposite, and then the third one after the setter is also in the opposite, the OH, the outside hitter, right? So the next two one, number 1 after the setter, and number 3 after the setter are the outside hitter. The opposite is the number 2 after the setter, so you got a 2 and then I add 1, and then the middles are plus 1 and plus 4. So that's what is happening. So the function here is there, and those one will stay because it's based on the lineup and it's based on the location of the setter, which is defined there by Volleystation. Now, if you want to go into the detail in that function, if you don't understand the function, just go for it and implement it. If you want to understand it, the function, let me go into the detail in that spreadsheet. So this is, I'm using the lineup. And what I go here is I'm taking the lineup of the opposite. So the lineup, if I just say lineup of the opposite, what it's telling me is it's telling me the location of the setter at that time in that current rotation. So let's look at that game here. That's the game that is against USA. It's finished, right? So the game is finished. So if you go into the set 4, the last point they were in zone 5. So the setter here, number setter was in 5. So of course, now that I'm in the next the next rally, that doesn't exist because they won. But the next rally would be that the setter is in zone 4, which is what I see here. So my setter is in zone 4. Once you actually pass this AZ4 to the same lineup, right? So if you pass AZ4, it's giving you the number of the player, which is what we're looking for. We're looking for that number. So what I want is I want to find all the lineup, and I want to start with the setter, and I want to find what the setter is, and then I want to calculate the other one. So finding the setter in every rotation is easy because I'm actually getting this VS lineup there. Finding the other one is a bit more complex. And the reason is because usually in math and in software engineering, you would actually, loop and say, okay, I want the next one, right? So the next one would be AZ5, AZ6, and then the next one would be, AZ7. So what you want to do is you want to say, when it's 7, I want to go back to 1. There is a function that we use there to do that in software engineering. It's called mod. It's usually the old-fashioned function that we do. And the mod function, if, look at that. It's actually not defined here, the mod function. The mod function actually returned the modulus, which is what stays as an integer after I divide by a certain number, right? So we calculate in base 10, so that's our mod 10. But let's say we calculate in mod 6. What I can actually do into a spreadsheet is I said, look, if I want the modulus, which is the stay, of 5 divided by 6, right? Well, it stays 5 because I cannot divide it, right? If I want to say the mod of 6 divided by 6, it stays 0, right? And if I want the mod of actually 7, it's 1. So that's kind of making sure that you're actually looping because you can add 1, find a modulus, and then you know that it's actually a base 6. Now, the problem is it's a base 6 starting on 0, right? My mod of 1 is 1. My mod of 2 is 2. My mod of 3, 3. But my mod of 6 is 6. And our players actually start with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So what I need to do is I need to take that number and add 1. Right? That's how I'm going to actually find the right number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So let's go back again. I'm having my lineup. I can extract the number here, right? So I'm going to, so it's a bit Volleystation, but what is happening is here you got the lineup, right? Which is going to return to me A, Z, or Z4. I want to transform it into a text. For some reason, and I'll show you, if I actually if I just want the rightmost number, because I know it's going to be a number, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but if I want the rightmost number of this one, and I just want this one, right? It's not going to return me the right information. But if I want to do this one, I think, and again, it's without an X, right? Now it's going to return me the 4. So I need to transform that into a text for some reason. It says, look, do not get the value, which is AZ4, which is used somewhere, but transforming into a text that is character A, character Z, character 4, and now return to me the rightmost number. So I'm going to get number. So I know it's number 4. So what I need to do now is I need to actually modulus this one that says, I need to actually now do, it's going to be 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then transform that into the other situation. So what I do is I take this number 4, and I actually add 0 in a module, so give me 4, and then I add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I know, it actually loops, and then I add 1. I add 1 to that, so instead of being base 0, I'm base 1. So what is happening is my modulus, my right modulus there, right? And I add 1 is going to do 5. So this is going to loop all the time, and this is going to give me the right information because I'm going to know the location of the stuff. And then when I do the next one, is always going to be the one after. So if I change, if my lineup changes now, right? If I change to AZ5, this should change to 5. This will change to, the 5 is going to become 6. This will change to 1. And so I know where they are now. Let's do that. I'm going to do that. AZ5. Yeah, it's getting the lineup there because it's going to, so I need to actually get the number here. I'm going to do D4. Right, and now it's calculating 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I know where they are. I know where that player is in that certain step because the number is going to change as a clockwork, right? So I'll get the setter. I know what the setter is. And then I calculate the number for the next player. What is the rotation for the next player? And because I know if the next one is actually a middle or something like that, I'm going to stay and I'm going to calculate that. So that stuff is going to change. It's going to tell me where that player is in that rotation. And if I got the next rotation, let's say is at 2, that player here, I'm going to figure out what rotation he is going to be rotation 4. So when the setter is in 2, that player is going to be in 4. So that calculation is what I got here. If you look at that, what I got in the first line there is I'm getting the lineup of the setter, and I know that I don't have to do anything because I know that the first one is going to be the setter, and I know that this is going to be right all the time. Like regardless of the rotation, I know that this is going to be proper, right? I want to know where the setter is. I'm going to get his number, and I know this line is always going to be the setter. Now, what is happening is this one here, what I'm taking here is I'm saying that if I mod that and if I add 1 to that, it's going to be the outside hitter. If I mod 3, so I'm the setter, 1, 2, 3, so it's giving me the opposite, right, location, and I add 1, it's going to be the outside hitter, right? So I'm modding this 1 plus 3, that's giving me what the opposite is, and then it's going to give me plus 1, which is the outside hitter. And now this is going to be the outside hitter. So this is not going to change regardless of the rotation. Same thing here. Now what I did is, if I got escape, I got plus 2, which is giving me the opposite, right? Because plus 2 is coming to the middle, and I got 1, and those 2 here are actually the middle blocker. So that thing, regardless of where I am in the game, is going to automatically change. And if I got substitution, and if I do my AZ1 or AI1, so if I tell Volleystation, this is where the setter is. The setter is always going to be the first one, then the next outside hitter, then the opposite, then into middle. And my my coach doesn't have to change anything. And if I don't change, that's fine because the opposite is going to become the setter and it's going to become the number 1. I hope this is kind of clear, but use this one. This is going to stay the way it is. Now, if you stayed that long, here's the other trick for you just for listening to me, blah, 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 blah. The other thing that I did, so first of all, is I locked those cells so nobody can actually change them because I don't want to change them because they're totally calculated. But this is what I did. My player and all the calculation there is not based on this one. And that's because I want to be able to override. You see this gray here? I want to be able to override. For some reason, I said, look, I don't care what the starting 6. I want to be something like that. So what I got here in the player, it says that if this one is not filled as an override, then use this value. And it's the same in every other stuff, right? I'm going to use that value if it's filled and that value if it's not. So if the new setter comes, or if I said, look, I don't really care about 7, I want to see what number 10 did, I'm going to override it. The rest is going to stay, but I'll say the number 1, the setter, I just want to see what Morgan is doing. I don't care about, sorry about that, but I don't care about Dyer. So that's a little trick that I did in that one. I hope it helps. As I said, this VS lineup, I use it a lot to actually keep exactly who is on the court. I use it into this one here to tells me what is happening, what is the rotation. So I know as a team, okay, that team hasn't changed their lineup in the past 4 or 5 games, and they always start, in 1 or 2. The other one that I'm doing, and I'm trying to find now the little spreadsheet. I do that without a net. I did that with what I call the next rotation. So this is one that you've probably seen that I'm trying to figure out. It says, okay, this is some information about that rotation, and this is some information about the next rotation. So I calculate information about the serve, right, of who is serving right now. That's AZ6, so I want to see who's serving there, and I want to know who is serving to the next one, so I can prep some information, during a timeout. So I use this VS lineup extensively here about who is serving now and who is going to serve next time, who is the next player, and so on and so on. I hope it helps, and let me know if you have any question or concern.